Hi, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be with you. And while they say Yom Shishi HaKatzar, that Friday is a short day because we get excited for Shabbat, it seems even more so in my Jewish learning with only 45 minutes for Torah study. But don't you worry, by the end of this, we will still get to our Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek, that will be able to be strong, and be strengthened together, hopefully a little bit more strong from this learning together. And I will say I'm really excited. I just saw someone from Ashland, Oregon. I lived in Eugene, Oregon for 4 years, so yay, Oregon. But I will say that generally it's really, really lovely because when I used to do a Torah teaching in any capacity on Zoom, it was recording a podcast where I got to get other people to talk a lot and I got to ask a lot of questions. So now it seems like Mara and my Jewish learning has been able to flip the switch a little. And I guess I will talk some more today, but don't worry, I'm still going to ask some questions. We're still going to get to hear some stories. It's going to be great. And so before I do anything else, and I know we're going to do a little bit of prayer for engaging in Torah, but before we do anything else, I'm going to ask everyone just to do me a big favor and take a deep breath in. All right, exhale. All right, I'm going to invite you to take one more deep breath in. And when you exhale, let those shoulders drop. All right, and one last breath in. Let the shoulders drop. Maybe even give me a little smile when you exhale. See, they're already ready for me. That's why they're smiling. Weren't cute at all. We're just excited about it. We're gonna join together with confirm my speaking language. No, I'm still speaking English. I'm gonna cancel that. So you're gonna learn that I am just as easily distracted as anyone else who has ever either led or been on a Zoom, but hopefully it'll be entertaining for all of you. But before we get to engage solely in our Torah, we get to bless over our engagement. So we're going to do it together. I'm not going to invite everyone to come off mute because, as Mara says, it's going to be a little nuts with so many of us. But I invite you to really emphasize with your mouths so I can see that you're praying with me. And we say together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And I'm going to say amen, amen to everybody who prayed in their own homes so that everybody has a beautiful amen blessing and culminating their prayer. And, feel free to shoot out an amen to me either in your text chat or either mouthing it real loud. Or if amen is not your style, just give me a thumbs up. I'm always happy to see them. Amazing. Wonderful. Thank you. So I know we don't have a ton of time, and don't worry because Piku Day is not so long, but also don't worry, I still have plenty of material for you because of course. All right, I saw it, praying for people who have damaged homes. That's going to be difficult today, especially when we're talking about building and continuing to try to build community in a place where we are feeling a little lost. But maybe we'll learn in their honor of people who lost their homes in the tornadoes in Indiana, Ohio. Thank you for shouting them out. So Mary, you're sharing the source sheet. I'm sharing the source sheet. Either way, it doesn't matter to me. So amazing. My Jewish learning has started sharing. Okay, so Piku Day is our ultimate portion. We're going to talk about it a little, but here's the important piece. Piku Day, what I decided I wanted to teach on tonight, and I'm going to say thank you because you helped me with my sermon this evening, is that really Piku Day is a lot of us having the receipts. We have the receipts we did the planning and now we're moving into the doing. For people that are very curious about the picture, I promise you this will be the only one that I have for you, but I just thought it was too perfect to not have somebody going, I have the receipts, that we have it written down. And so we are starting not in Piku Day because, I like to be a little bit of a rabble rouser, but we're starting first back into Roma, which is why we're in Exodus 25, 8-9. And so this is a song that the people have sung and made some beautiful music from. But the idea of the Asuli Mikdash, V'shachanti b'tocham, let them make me, or make for me, or make of me, or make to me a sanctuary, so I might be able to dwell among them, in the middle of them, with them, inside of them. You know, the idea of the, oh Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary comes from these very Exodus lines. And as God showed us, that's not really the rest of the song, but God says, exactly as I show you, I'm giving you a pattern that you should stick to, and you giving you very, very strict instructions. And that's the way that this should be made. So, okay, you're going, Rabbi Weiss, you're a New York Jew, you're talking too quickly, you've moved too fast for us. What are we actually doing today? And so what we're actually doing today is talking about, yes, Parshat Piku Day, but sometimes we need to know what happened before to get to where we are. So what is Parshat Piku Day? Parshat Piku Day is the ultimate last portion in the book of Exodus. It's the very, very last thing. Thanks, Harry. I appreciate the 100%. It's the very last thing that we read before we're heading into Leviticus. So here's where we've been kind of getting to where we are now. We'd been on a journey, I said, of planning and plotting, of designing and drafting that kind of got us, by the way, through Turama and Tetzaveh, and even a little bit we're seeing of Mishap and Mayhem and Kitisa. And finally, with Vayakal Piku Day, we're returning to creating holy spaces. So, okay, well, how did we get here? And so imagine you're the italicized text, because I sometimes have conversations with myself. Hopefully, all of you are, like me and sometimes talk to yourselves. And so I'm going to invite everybody to say out loud, what's happened so far? Let's see if you can mouth it at me really loud with hand motions and lots of what happened so far? I'm so glad you asked. Gosh, what a wonderful learner you are. So what had happened so far before we got here were kind of some blueprints, some brokenness, and then we went to building. So in Teruma, where we started quite a few weeks ago, all the Israelites were told to bring these gifts of the heart, anything that they were willing to give, any skill that they were willing to share, to plan out the building of the tabernacle with directions on dimensions, materials, utilization, who was going to be involved. Then, and by the way, this year it doesn't work because we have the extra month, but often Tetzaveh connects around the time that Purim is happening, where we talk about the priestly garments. Those are designed. And what I wrote was picture Fashion Week in the wilderness. For Aaron and his sons, I know somebody just said, are you going to talk about Aaron and his sons? Yes, I will, a little. But that these were garments that people would really easily be able to see and be able to identify, hey, those are priests. So for anybody that knows me, they know that usually I'm identifiable because I wear a cardigan almost every day. And so they'd be able to be like, oh, it's a cardigan rabbi. For my kindergartners, they call me Rabbi Candy because of the candy that's in my office. So I have my own identifiable things. But for the priestly, the high priest and his family, they had very special garments made from beautiful, beautiful colors. And the idea was that they were supposed to wear things that would represent all the people, so that they were really wearing the responsibility of the people on their hearts. That's happening on Tetzaveh. Now, why is that fun? Because when it connects with Purim on a regular year, not a leap year, think about the costumes and thoughts we put into the clothes we wear for Purim and the images that we want to put out there and what we might be showing and what we might be hiding. So kind of cool. All right, then we have Kitzisa, our golden calf. We have some mishaps. We have some misbehavior. We have some broken tablets. And I made a really terrible joke, but it's too late to take it out now because this is recorded. So I said, unfortunately, with no Apple repair replacements. And so generally, in Kitzisa, we have a moment where we have a plan and we haven't quite started on making the plan happen. And so what happens in the world when we have a plan? Well, some people say man plans and God laughs. There are people who sometimes say when you're about to get everything you ever wanted, that's usually when something goes wrong and tries to throw you off course. And so in Kitzisa, we're thrown off course, right? We have a moment of doubt and we have a moment where we're like, I don't know what's going to happen. And we're unsure if we really want this holy space or can have this holy space without the people that help give us the instructions to make it. Luckily for us, Moses comes back, we're breathing, we're okay, and we start moving from misbehavior into managed building. And so for Vayakel, we actually start building the tabernacle as a community. And we get to create the holy space from both singular, like Betzalel and Oholiav, and shared talents. By the way, in case anyone's curious, women are like greatly singled out in Vayakel because they were spinning. They were known that they were spinning linens and goat hair, and different yarns. And so kind of a cool thing. And especially because I talked about it on International Women's Day last week, I'll shout it out again now. But there's an italics sentence, so you all know what's going to happen next. Let's read it together. Great. But what happens this week? All right, well, first off, I need you to be a little patient, okay? I wanted to talk about where we've been so we could talk about where we are. So here's what's going to happen this week. We're continuing with a little bit of the important numbers from the tabernacle, what's used and who's involved, and finalizing exactly what goes where. Tabernacle is a bad translation. Okay, so Mishkan, because of Shekhinah, you like dwelling. Totally fine. I agree with you. It's like when people talk about tefillin being phylacteries is not a great translation. So if you like dwelling, I'll try to stick to that better. I apologize. I used the JPS translation from Safaria. And I love the idea that translation can be an intercommunal activity and an art. And so if dwelling works better for you, I love it. Hold it close to your heart. So I want to say for the rest of Piku Day, which we're not going to focus on so much just because of time, we do focus on the clothing design and it being created and what's happening here. But first, we started really with where we are in the first kind of 10, 11 lines. Don't you worry. I'm not going to read all of the lines at you because I think that that's hard. And I think that that's not always fun, but I did want to point out some of the major things that you're seeing. And so, Mara, if you can take your mouse and just point out the Pikude and Pukad on the left side of the page, the red. Okay, so Pikude, which is where we get the name of our actual portion this week, we're going to see it a couple of times within just these first moments. And we are going to look at what the idea of what does it mean, Pakad? What does it mean, Pukad? What does it mean, Pikude? What does it mean, Hapikudim? We've been hearing that a lot over the last couple of weeks. If you go back and look at any of your Torah portions over the last few weeks, you're going to see Pikude, Pikudim, Hapikudim, Hapikude, Hapikude. And it's going to come up quite a bit. And so we're going to say, well, what does that mean? But we're also going to look a little bit about how we start. And we start really specifically. We had, okay, Ele Pikudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdot, Asher Pukad Al Pi Moshe. Okay, so these were, and we say the records of the dwelling of pact, or I would say, like, you could say of the witnessing, edut, eda is evidence or witnesses. Asher Pukad Al Pi Moshe, which were made notice, taken notice or drawn up, it says, at kind of the word of Moshe. Avodat HaLeviim beyad Itamar ben Aharon HaKohen. The work of the Levites, so this building, right, is supposed to, in some ways, be done by the Levite tribe under the specific direction of Itamar, son of Aaron, the priest. So we really want to know who's responsible. Now, why does that matter? Well, I don't know if you remember, but in Kitisa, Aaron doesn't really want to take responsibility for the golden calf. In the beginning of Kitisa, he says, give me all your gold. And he puts it in a mold and he puts it together and he puts it in the oven. Out comes the golden calf. But when he's retelling the story and Moses says, what is it that you've done to these people? Aaron goes, I don't know. They wanted a calf and I threw it in the thing and out come out a golden calf. Who knew? It's magic. And so in some ways, it seems like we really want to know who's in charge here. We've been a little nervous because we haven't really known where our leaders are. And in Pikude, we have the receipt. Okay, we know who's in charge. The other people who are in charge, right? We have Uvitzalel, ben Uri, ben Hor, Lemata Yehuda. Betzalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so we know the Levites are involved in the tabernacle. We know that Judah, the tribe of Judah, is represented. By the way, Judah being Jerusalem, Judah being the southern part of Israel, Judah being a big tribe, is the person who's been imbued with wisdom and understanding from God. I love it. Yes, Team Judah here represent. Amazing. I told you, Mara, I love getting all the chat comments. I'm going to try to stay focused, but I promised you I was going to get distracted. So everybody hopefully is still going to have a good time. So Bezalel has been given all these things, is creating art, is drafting. And just like Adam, it was not okay to do it alone. Just like Moses, it was not a good thing to do these things alone. Bezalel has a buddy in the process. And at his side, right, Ve'ito, and with him, Ahaliav ben Achisamach lematadan, so that you have Ohaliav, son of Achisamach, of the tribe of Dan. And so generally, you have somebody who is in it with him. Great. So why does it matter that we need to know who's in charge? Why does it matter that we need to know the people that are involved in the story? Well, that's a great question for future Rabbi Weiss, and we're going to get there in a couple of minutes. If we move down a little bit, you're going to see that I really highlighted some of the math. Now, I'm no mathematician. I'm a rabbi. I don't pretend to have the ability to make numbers add up. But in this portion, you can see that we're really careful about making sure that we know exactly what was used in gold, 29 talents and 730 shekels, exactly what was used in silver, 100 talents and 1,775 shekels. We know who's kind of making sure that we're getting in these places. Everyone that quote counts. Men from the age of 20 years old, 603,550 men. Now, here's the interesting thing. For my women who, or my female identifying or my non-male identifying friends who are in the room, they're going to say, well, where are we in this story? And I have to tell you, it's not so obvious, but I'm going to tell you where you are. You are back in Kitisa because the men had taken all of their golds and they had made a golden calf, and then Moses made them drink a very, very bad soup. But our women or our our non-male identifying friends, there's a midrash that says that they said absolutely not, and they kept their gold and they kept their own, and so they were able to use all of this gold to be able to help make the holy space. And that is why we were gifted Rosh Chodesh, which has nothing to do with Piku Day, but is a fun little fact to give to you, because now we're in Adar Bet. And so why does it matter that we know exactly what the weight was and we have a receipt of what it is that we're doing? And why is it important that we have these instructions that help us understand exactly what's supposed to go where, who's supposed to put, these things into these places? I will tell you, for people who are asking me about the scientific pieces of how this would work, I have no idea. I will openly tell you that there are many rabbis who might be able to answer that question, and I will not be one of them. But I will say that in some ways, my guess is that probably the materials that they were using were not materials as we know them maybe now. It might have been made of tougher stuff, may have been made of, there may have been people that were able to say, okay, these things work, so that the silver was used for making sockets and the talents fit into the sockets. Torah silver, not the same as regular silver. Thanks, Richard. That helps me. I'm happy for our learners to answer the questions I can't. That we have copper also being used. The fact is that we really tried to use all of the resources that we had to hand to make something beautiful. And that was pretty cool. So beautifully entertaining. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if it's me or, the Mishkan that we're talking about, but I'll take the compliment for both. Mara, will you move us down a little? Amazing. So thank you. I appreciate NC. And just so you know, I'm getting these popped up every now and then, the chats. And so I know there have been some questions that come in. If I've missed yours, don't worry, I will look back at it. I'll make sure we have time. Mara's keeping me honest about, sticking to our time. And so that's partially also why I'm keeping a little bit quick to move us forward. Now, here's the deal. We talked about Piku Day, and I said, well, why do the receipts matter? And I would say, yes, it's true. It is a good run up to Leviticus, full of minute details. But why does Piku matter? It's because it shows up a lot, and often it shows up when with God. Piku shows up a lot with the idea of God being a part of something. So what does right Pe Kuf Dalid Pakad mean? Well, I took a bunch of different um different verses from Torah to say, okay, well, this is what we think that it seems to mean. And then I mess all of us up when I, go to this week's portion and it says something different. I'm just telling you now before everyone gets mad at me. So when we first kind of see the idea of Pakad, it's Sarah. It's actually God seeing Sarah in Genesis 21. It says, "Vadonai pakad et Sarah ka'asher amar, vayas Adonai lesarah ka'asher diber." So God had promised Sarah that she would have a child. Sarah, if you remember, went, nah. And God goes, no, 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 hold on. You're going to have a kid. I'm going to make it happen. And here is when we're talking about the idea of Sarah getting pregnant, Sarah having a child, Sarah being able to have these moments and having her feelings taken note of. The idea is God took note. Fast forwarding like very quickly, kind of into our pre-Exodus story, we have again this idea of Joseph saying to his brothers, listen, I'm about to die, but don't worry, even though I'm in this leadership place. The Elohim, pakod yivkod etchem. God will surely take notice of you. So whenever you kind of have that pakad yivkod, whenever you have those two verbs that are together, you can kind of imagine it being like God will so totally, definitely, absolutely, for real do the verb. And so here, Joseph, and he couldn't say all those words, right? Because he's about to die and he's out of breath. And so, but really, Joseph's trying to say, God will so totally, absolutely, 100%, definitely, 1,000, do the thing. And here, the thing is taking notice of you and bring you up. Interesting thing, I see people arguing about dolphin skins, which was also in Saruma, and also one of my best friend's favorite things to talk about is that dolphin skins in the Torah. And there are two thoughts about dolphin skins because I'm going to get distracted. Mara, I'm so sorry. But two things about dolphin skins. One is that people think that it might be that there were dolphins in the sea when it was split. And that, possibly there was water in the desert and then the water disappeared and these were left over. The other is that we were left with every single thing that we needed. And if you remember, we borrowed some gold and jewelry from our Egyptian neighbors when we left Egypt. And so it's possible that there were some dolphin skins that also got borrowed at that time. So it might be things that we already had with us versus anything else. I like unicorn skins as well. That makes me a little bit more nervous. So I think we're gonna move forward back to our fakad. And so here we have the understanding that Joseph is saying, listen, God made this promise, and that was the same thing as Sarah. And so God made a promise, God will be able to do this. And so here in Exodus 3:16, by the way, Exodus 3 is when Moses is talking to the burning bush for the first time, and meeting God for the first time. We have God saying to Moses, go get all of the elders of Israel and say to them, Adonai, right? The Elohei Avotechem, Adonai, the God of your ancestors, right? The God who appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, he says, Pakod pikadati, right? Pakod pikadati etchem, that I have super taken note of you, right? There's our two verbs together again. That's really an emphatic, yo, I see you. I see you. For those people who've been doing the hand motions when I've asked you, don't worry, I see you. I see the thumbs up. I see the laughter. I see the jokes. And so God here is also taking note of what's being done to you in Egypt. And if you remember, when God pakads, God also does something to make sure that God is keeping up God's end of the deal. Mara will go down a little bit. So we're in Exodus 13:19. And again, here we're past the Joseph story. We're past a lot of the Moses piece. And Moses is taking with him, as they're leaving Egypt, the bones of Joseph. Why? Because God had made an oath, right? And by the way, here you have two double verbs, hashvea, kishvia. God totally, like we have a total swearing. I know, I'm sorry, I keep making you do that. But we have a total swearing from the people of Israel, and they understand that because Joseph had said, God's absolutely going to make sure to take notice of you. So please make sure that you bring my bones with you when you go. And that's happening, right? It's showing we also have to hold up our end of the deal. Why? Because we have the receipts. Okay, keep going. Now, this is when I mess everybody up because I've said it's take notice, it's take notice, it's take notice. And here in Exodus 38:21, where we start our Piku day, we have our Ela Piku day, Mishkan Ha'edut, Asher Pukad. I forgot to do the other one in that. I'm sorry. Al Pi Moshe Avodat Halaviim B'yad Itamar ben Aharon HaKohen. So here, the issue is, we don't say these are the take notices of the tabernacle of the pact, which were taken notice at Moses' bidding. So here we say that it's really like a record. It's really an issue of being able to have these things be on our plate, that we need to be able to take notice of them and keep a record. Okay. Why is it important for us to take notice / keep records? Well, in part because it helps keep us accountable. In part because it helps us understand how far we've come from and to where we are now. I don't know if it's Andrea or Andrea, so I'm going to say both just so that hopefully I hit it. Says you can't make a record unless you have taken note. That's true, right? You have to have an intentional pakad moment, a leaf code moment. And here, the idea is keeping an account of our actions and our history. I said helps us not only ensure that we're following directions correctly and acting in accordance, potentially with our own values, but also assists us in, quote, keeping the receipts, the what, how, why, when, where, and who that ties us to our traditions and texts. So recently I had to, I won't say I had to, recently I got to talk about my own God theology with my congregation. And somebody said, well, who says there is a God? We just know how to be ethical. And I said, well, how do you know how to be ethical? And I said, well, we know what's right and wrong. And I said, well, how? And they said, well, because we know what's good or bad. And the question is, but how? And I said, well, we just do. Like, we know not to steal. And I said, why? And they said, well, because stealing takes from another person. I said, yeah, but then you have money in your pocket. That seems good. How do you know that it's not ethical? And so the idea is that these things keep us honest. They keep us ethical. They keep us aligned with our moral values. They keep us trying to reach some sort of potential or movement or progress to our best selves. And so I tied us in here a little bit to Musar. Yes, before written records, there was an oral history, but I would say again, those oral histories were a way of trying to keep us kind of in focus, making sure that, again, we were tied to our best selves. And keeping records, interestingly enough, didn't necessarily always have to be written down, but here I suggest that they should be written down. And here, because especially when they're spoken and shared, often things sometimes get lost or mistranslated or twisted, for anyone who's ever played telephone. And so I said there are some Jewish practices of keeping a journal of our behavior, and that's a Musar practice, where one focuses on a specific character trait that they hope to improve on a daily basis. And even some of our American forefathers were big believers of keeping track. And so I wanted to share with you that Benjamin Franklin did this. And some of our Jewish Musar teachers know about this and try to emulate Benjamin Franklin. For anybody that wants to enjoy a daily tracker of Musar principles, Musar being something, again, that we try to focus on bettering ourselves, like what we do on Yom Kippur when we number our sins, kind of, but that's a once a year accountability versus an everyday accountability. There is a book called by Alan Marinis called Everyday Holy Day. And it's a little bit of a journal with a prompt that focuses you on a specific midah every day, if you want. I'm happy to put that in the chat at the end, just as a shout out to something that is a cool resource. So Benjamin Franklin also kept a daily journal on 13 values that he aimed to master. Cool. Also can be used in 12-step programs. Thanks, Jennifer. Focusing on one value per week. And what that meant, by the way, is meaning a year, he would focus on each value 4 times. You could do whatever values work for you, and you could do potentially whatever you could do whatever works for you, and you could do whatever values might work for you as well. The values that he tested were temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility. Here's the deal. Franklin tried to do the things that he wasn't good at. Right? He was trying to work on things that he felt like he was failing at. And so these are the places where taking note can help us move forward, which I think is really special and really important. Yeah, Franklin, I wrote, Franklin kind of admits that he really failed more times than he succeeded. I see some comments talking about Franklin's not so greatness at being at hitting his marks. I think it's something he noticed. And again, kind of something that's very neat. Here's the deal. I do have some questions for discussion, but before we get there, because people are really focusing on the Franklin failure, I would say that one of my favorite general texts is a Pirkei Avot text by Shammai, which has nothing to do with Piku Day, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway because Mara didn't say I couldn't. She didn't say I couldn't pivot, so we're pivoting at Piku Day. So one of my favorite Shammai quotes, which is Pirkei Avot 115. And I got you, Mara. Look, I got you. I'm gonna throw it in the chat. Boom. I had you. And so Rabbi Shammai used to say, make your study of the Torah a fixed practice, speak little, but do much, and receive all, I'll say people, but all humanity. And Mara doesn't even need me. She's like, I got this. Okay, so Shammai used to say, Oseh Toratacha keva, make your Torah fixed, right? Make it fixed, whether it's study of or whether it's your actual Torah derech eretz, whether it's your manners or whether it's whatever you want to describe Torah as today, make it fixed in some way. Emor me'at ve'aseh harbeh. Don't talk so much. Do a lot more. Or under promise and over deliver. Ve'hevi mekabel et kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafot. And if you can, make sure that you greet everybody, receive everybody that comes your way with a cheerful countenance. Now, here's the fun part about that. And with everybody that's like Benjamin Franklin failed. Shammai was not known for being a man of the people. Shammai was known for throwing sticks at people, for chasing people away, for yelling at people, for not wanting people to waste his time. Shammai was known for having no issue telling a bride that she didn't look pretty on her wedding day. And so one of the reasons that this is one of my favorite teachings is because Shammai was not known for being able to receive all men with a pleasant countenance. It wasn't something he was good at, but it's something he knew was worthwhile teaching. I think that there's something really beautiful and powerful about teaching something that you're not great at. And maybe that you can't even do yet, but you aspire to, because you know the value of that teaching and you know the value of the ability to make it just a little bit step forward, a little bit towards progress. Mara, I know that you're going to end up sharing the screen again for the discussion questions, but before you do that, can I just really quickly look at the chat questions and see if I can hit any of the things? Great. I know I have 8 minutes. I'm going as fast as I can. I hope that we're doing great. Okay, so first off, everybody who's written in the chat, you're awesome. Everybody who hasn't written in the chat, you're also awesome. Live your best life, and participate as you want to. And so, okay, the last time I said something was basically about silver. How can any human scale structure be a dwelling place for God? Wouldn't an even better translation be lodge, a place to stay in or visit? It depends if you think that God has a size. And so I think generally speaking, the idea is, right, like this is the dwelling place that God required us to make for God. God said, listen, I'm giving you the patterns, I'm giving you the plans. So, I mean, I kind of think that's like us insulting someone who designed and built their own home. That's what they wanted. So all our job is to do is go, wow, that's some home. Great. Um, do we not tabernacle with God? I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I like it kind of sounds like do we rumble with God?
I
So
think
we
it
might
was someone making a note that tabernacle also dwelling. Do we not dwell with God?
no, do we not
Trying to
tabernacle
be
with God?
punny
I
there.
like it. That's a good joke. Thanks, Mary. I like it. I appreciate it. Yeah, we might tabernacle with God. Sounds good. Sounds like a question that I should walk away from. I already talked about that I cannot speak to alloys, but it seems like other people could. So I really appreciate it. Dolphins and unicorns, we already hit. I like that it said they were from the Dead Sea in terms of dolphins, but also the idea of unicorns in the Dead Sea sounds fun. So you would just imagine any of them swimming. There's a scaled fish, dolphin fish, okay. Pakad, yes, Ayala has so many meetings. Generally the idea, I would say it could be, especially when we get to numbers, is going to be counting. When we get to the book of Numbers, which we're not at right this second. In Genesis and Exodus, often, usually the idea is taking notice of really, really seeing someone for who they are, really making sure that they're hitting. Not borrowed. That means the items will be returned. The gold, etc., was not going to be returned. Yes. So sometimes the idea is that they borrowed it indefinitely, mostly because we're not trying to say that the Israelites stole. So the rabbis are going to really hit on that. They borrowed indefinitely. We talked about that. I hit some of them. Why didn't God take notice of the Israelites for so long when they were slaves in Egypt? The answer in the goddess seems rather weak. And Ara had an answer for that. Sometimes the idea is pakad because it took them a while to cry out, and there were multiple cry outs, which is why there were 4 different ways that God was going to save us, because there were 4 different ways that people cried out and got God's attention. And so I think the idea potentially was that we might have needed to be united as a people to cry out in order to be seen. And also, sometimes you want to be like, but why couldn't God notice before we cried out? Because that would be nice. And the answer is, I don't always know, but sometimes we have to break in order to grow. And so maybe sometimes we have to break in order for God to also take note. A journal would be appreciated. Thank you. Alan Marinas' book is great. The journal is great. I know that he also wrote a different book, which is also Everyday. It's Everyday Holiness, I think, is the book that is not the journal. Everyday Holy Day is the journal. Where the women's voices in Musar, in the same place that they are generally non-existent in traditional times, but are more existent nowadays. I will say, like, women do teach in the Musar Institute. I will say that there is a Musar commentary, Torah commentary, in which women are definitely focused on as well. And so that might be an answer. We talked about Franklin. I love that.
Rabbi
Shammai was,
Amanda, Jack has
yes.
his hand up if we want to
Oh,
hear from
I'm
him.
sorry, Jack. I was just looking at the thing. Great. Jack, hi.
Can't get off. Okay. With all that's going on over the past, it seems like years between Exodus and Leviticus, I am so tired of hearing about these specifics. And when I think about it, God at this time, gods that were worshipped were geographic. This is a universal God that wants God's space among the people, which is what the tabernacle is. The question I have is, why didn't God build this himself?
So my answer, so here's the deal, and Jack, I answered this in the same way that I answer everything, right? Which is, I know this is gonna shock everyone here, so I'm excited to see your shocked faces. I don't even pretend to speak for God. I know I'm a rabbi. I get it. I get it. I'm sorry that I'm not that kind of rabbi. So I don't pretend to speak for God. And of course, I have an answer to your question that I think it might be the right answer. But I don't speak for God. But I want you to think about if you have ever had a child or if you have ever taught children. So I am not a parent, but I've had thousands of children. And so that's a really important piece for me, which is that it is really important to not always do the thing. It is important to let others do the thing. It is really important when you're a rabbi to let others do the thing or you get burnt out real fast. And so I think in some ways the idea was that when you, ready, I didn't expect this to be an issue either, Mara, ready, I'm excited about it. When you work on a project together, especially when you work on a physical project with another person, you have something scientific and psychological happen in your brain called synaptic mirroring, neural mirroring. And what that means is that for a minute, biologically, psychologically, physically, you match up. So there's a joke that if ever you have somebody who's arguing in your workplace, have them move a table together. Literally have them pick up a table and move it. Because in that moment, that synaptic mirroring is the way that people bond. And so people do it via gameplay, people do it via projects, people do it via activity, but that when you're working collaboratively, and even sometimes when you're working competitively, but really when you're working collaboratively, that synaptic mirroring builds a really deep connection. Why does that matter for a group of people who just messed up at Kitisa and built like a golden calf because they couldn't get united or uniform? Because it helps us move to the next place. And so ideally, I think that's why I would say, A, God wanted the people to figure it out on their own because they didn't do such a good job in Kitisa. And B, the idea that this synaptic mirroring could really help us. And I see, and it brought the people back together. I'm so aware that I'm at time, Mara, and so I don't know if I'm allowed to answer any more questions.
Everyone is loving your Torah, so I will not dare cut you off.
Great. And so I thanks everybody. I'm seeing I'm both looking at Jack and I'm looking at the chat at the same time. So here's what I'll say. Really, really, really. This is a place that matters. We are human. We are fallible. We have the need to grow. The only way that we grow is by acknowledging that we break in the first place and that we mess up in the first place. And the only way that we can do that is if we take notice of it. So when our body hurts, when we have an ouch, it's our body's way of saying, wait a minute, something's wrong, right? Something's broken. We have to fix it. Now you might say well, what does that mean? Well, anybody here, just give me a thumbs up if you've ever worked out a day in your life, ever done any sort of exercise, even once. Great. Did your body hurt when you were done? If not, mine does every time. But if your body's ever hurt after working out, it's because of these little tiny muscular tears. Every time we work out, for anybody that was I didn't sign up for an exercise class today, why is the rabbi doing any sort of exercise? We get these minuscule muscular tears that then reconnect and get stronger. So we have to literally break in order to grow. But if we don't notice that, then that growth doesn't mean anything. And so Piku Day is a way that we were broken, that we got to go a little bit stronger. Now, I promised you something at the end of this session. If you remember, I promised you that we would end in strength. And because it is the last book, of Exodus, we would not be responsible if we didn't end in strength, if we didn't go, Hazak, Hazak, Vanit Hazek. And so I invite everybody to say together with those mouths, can we get some muscles in here? Let's go. Let's get some muscles in here. Let's get some strongness. If you don't want to make a muscle, thumbs up work just as well, because, thumb muscles are important to also exercise. So if we say together, Hazak, Hazak, Vanit Hazek, strength to the Israelite people in their building. Man, it's going to be hard. Their muscles are going to hurt. Strength to us now of the people Israel. Our muscles sometimes are getting tested these days. We also might hurt. Vanit Hazek. And when we come together in working on a project, in learning, in synaptic mirroring, Hopefully, we too will always be strengthened through Torah with each other. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you so much for such a wonderful experience. My first my Shehakianu moment. It was wonderful to learn together.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I don't think I've ever been in a Torah study where we moved so much. So thank you for both your moving words and for encouraging us to really see ourselves in the Torah. I'm wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom. We hope to see you next week for the start of Leviticus. Be well. Shabbat Shalom.